at 5:18. Roll call, please.
Smith here.
Hunter here.
Zalad here.
Gunning here.
Chowdhury here.
Coin here.
Fig here.
All right, move to, need to approve the agenda as it's presented. Any comments?
I move that we approve the agenda for the meeting tonight.
I'll second.
Second, moved by Fig, second by Coin to approve the agenda as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is the approval of the regular meeting minutes for August 20th. Give everybody a second to look those over.
Got a small print.
Yeah.
I printed it off. I got 2 pages on.
Hard to read.
Yeah. I was trying to do a page.
I
on
move
each
we
side.
approve the minutes for the August 20th meeting.
I second it.
Moved by Fig, seconded by
Chowdhury.
Chowdhury.
Yes, sir.
I get it right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the regular meeting minutes of September 17th. Do we need to approve the meeting minutes of a meeting that didn't happen?
Not really.
Okay.
There are no minutes.
Any public comment? Looks like the crowd's pretty thin, so reports. Who's on deck?
Thank you and good evening, everybody. The first item under the reports is the approval of the accounts payable. I'll go through those. We have accounts payable from a month ago that have not yet been approved because of the lack of quorum, but I will say that the checks were signed and issued and mailed out to the vendors.
Thank you.
And then the regular or current month's accounts payable. So the listing starts on page 4 of your agenda packet and goes over to page 5. We have a payment to Consumers Energy in the amount of $1,066. And that's total on the report. You might see more than one entry for somebody like Consumers Energy. That's for 2 months of payments. Allwood Landscaping, $612 for mulch on Pickard. Block Electric, $1,970 and some change. That was to switch out the gateway banners, convert one of the lights to an LED, and to replace the light pole at Somerton and Pickard. From the prior month, an invoice to CMU Printing for $2,500 for the production of the new gateway banners. We did pay Mr. Culver a month ago $17,815 for the trash and trash receptacle bench refurbishing project, and related to that, a payment to Ventura for $2,159 for trash cans for those receptacles. Pleasant Time, a payment over the course of the 2 months of $5,904. That was the July through September flower basket maintenance, cleanup, and since more recently, the removal of the flower baskets. MMI, payment of $1,194 for August and September park bench area cleanup. Wilson Lawn Care, $3,600, August and September lawn cutting on the curbside lawn. Had the fertilization put down, Be Green Lawn Service, $1,740 along Pickard. Payment to Union Township Utility, $8,641, that's the third quarter water bill. a payment to Plant Moran in $1,174. That's one half of the payment that was made for the month. The other half was paid by the West EDA. That's for the Public Act 57 compliance report project they're working on. This is a progress billing. The total EDA accounts payable for the 2 months is $50,278.58. And then on the West DDA, which is listed on page 6 of your packet, we have a payment to the Road Commission, $162,293 for the Lincoln Road repavement project. And then the other half of the payment to Plant Moran. The total West DDA accounts payable was $163,467.52. So I'll pause there and answer any questions anybody may have.
Question mark. On the Lincoln Road project, did that come in under budget?
It did come in under budget. The budget was around $200,000.
That's what I thought. And I just wanted to mention, it turned out excellent.
Mhm.
Just superb. It's fantastic. I drive that road often, and just a difference between night and day. So, excellent job. And they did a great job finishing it off. The shoulders are real nice.
And I'll pass those comments along. They are still needing to do the striping, and they will get to that. There's some other striping that they needed to get done first, and then there were some weather issues, but that'll be done yet.
Thanks.
Did we have another light pole get hit? You said replacing a light pole on Pickard and Somerton.
We did a couple months ago, and that was reported out at some point, but it did get hit, and we did put in an insurance claim, and I believe we've received that payment. And we were able to get that one back reinstalled sooner because the one we had ordered previously and some other parts were in inventory. We have ordered a new pole, put in inventory, so when the next one gets hit.
Gotcha.
Makes sense.
That's two poles in about 2 years.
Any other questions, or can I get a motion to pay the bills as presented?
Move we pay the bills as presented.
Support. Moved by Fig, supported by
Second me.
Smith, to pay the August and September bills as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
The next reporting item are the budget to actual reports. Those are through September.
Where's 4?
In your agenda packet, the East EDA starts on page 7. There's no action on these. This is just receive and file. But we have year-to-date revenues in the East EDA fund of $439,000. It's about 93% of the budget. There's no material changes from the prior month, a little bit of additional interest income compared to the prior month. On the expenditure side, year-to-date, it's $226,000, 46% of the budget. It's the normal operating expenditures compared to the prior month, with the exception of the payment related for the bench and trash receptacle projects that I just mentioned a moment ago. So those have been booked into that report. The West DDA budget to actual is on page 9 of your agenda packet. Revenues of $320,000, or 102% of the budget. Again, no material change from the prior month. On the expenditure side, year-to-date, $216,000 is 26% of the budget. This is about $163,000 more than the prior month's year-to-date expenses attributable almost solely to the payment to the road commission for the Lincoln Road project. Again, I'll pause there if there's any questions on the budget to actual reports for the East or West EDA. If not, the balance sheet is in your agenda packet. Again, that's a receive and file. On page 10 is the East EDA, and that fund balance is $1,338,000 and some change. It's essentially all cash, very little change from the prior month. And on the West EDA, which is page 11, we have a fund balance of $1,120,000. Again, essentially all cash and approximately $160,000 lower than the prior month, again due to the payment to the road commission. Be happy to answer any questions you may have on any of that.
All right.
Okay. And then just kind of going down your agenda, item 7C is the board member expiration matrix sheet that's always in your packet. I will point out that there's several openings by the end of the year for the Zoning Board of Appeals, Construction Board of Appeals, and flowing into the first quarter for the Planning Commission. So anybody that you may know that's interested in helping out, volunteering for the township, if you can help put out the word, that'd be great. And applications are on our website if anybody is interested. The water and sewer project progress reports are in your packet. No real change from the prior month. Pump station number 1, we are looking to rebid that yet this year. That was the one that came in so much higher back in the spring, and so we decided to do nothing, rebid it in the fall, and we do have that budgeted, as you'll see in a moment, in FY20, assuming the bids are a little bit more attractive. And then pump station 14, we've been waiting on, I believe it was the pump. It was like a 16-week delivery time. That was supposed to be in September. To my knowledge, it's come in, and so they're going to start that if they haven't already started.
Yeah,
That project,
they've been pumping, so I assume they're doing something.
That project hopefully will end by the end of the year. And so that takes us through the reports. And I'll turn it kind of back over to the chair,
All right.
although I believe I'll be
I
speaking.
guess, do we
to the
have
next items.
somebody from the subcommittee who wants to go over the recommendations for Jameson Park? We have something in our board packet we can look at.
I can speak to that. As you'll recall, the EDA commissioned a Jameson Park master plan earlier in the year, and that was completed. The results of that presented to the body. There's a whole long list of things, total a little over $400,000. Following that presentation, the EDA created a subcommittee to review that list. They met in August, and the subcommittee's recommendations that are being made to the full board are to address the code-related improvements in the approximate amount of $8,700. There is a listing of those on page 18 of your agenda packet. Subcommittee is also recommending some of the exterior improvements primarily related to parking and lighting in the amount of $75,000. And so the total of the improvements that the subcommittee is recommending are a little over $84,000, and then we've inserted a 15% construction contingency just because these numbers were from the master plan report, along with a 10% design and bidding, construction administration support. So the total of these recommended projects is $106,631. And I will say that I included this in the budget recommendation that was made to the Board of Trustees. We were going to be going over this last month. We didn't have an opportunity to. I presented the full township-wide budget to the board last week, so I went ahead and included these. All the board has done is receive the manager's recommendation, so if there's any changes to this, it's not too late to address this. I will also point out, as it relates to Jamison Park, that in addition to the subcommittee's recommendation of these improvements, also included in the general fund Union Township budget recommendation are additional improvements from the master plan of about $104,000 of additional improvements. So there's a total program, if you will, a Jamison Park improvement program of $211,000 included in all the budgets. Funding coming from EDA if you approve the EDA budget, and then also funding from the general fund towards Jamison Park. The subcommittee had talked about trying to get some additional funding partners, and
Were the additional $100,000 already spoken for as far as what the improvements were going to be for Jamison Park?
from the general fund.
Yes, from the general fund.
I don't have that list with me, but we took what we thought, the administration thought made sense to do in conjunction with what's being done here.
But Mark, this how much that park is being used, you see, by public. You see, we made some money, we spent a lot of money 3, 4, 5 years ago, around 250,000 or so, to improve that Jamestown kitchen and all that. When John,
I don't think we ended up, we talked about that, but I don't think that ever got, I know it never got
I don't think so.
approved.
Right.
It got
so
taken.
there was a lot of, money spent at that time in on the
There
kitchen
was-
and
They were
building.
talking about spending a lot of money into upgrading the kitchen and making it a community
It's like
kitchen.
200 or
but-
250,000.
Yeah, and I
We didn't
never
pass
did
that.
it. But that never got passed. I don't think it ever got past the design stage.
No.
Even there, so.
So the improvements that we're talking about for FY20, you see the list here in your agenda packet. And then,
But how much that park is popular, and because if you want to spend money,
it gets some use.
is people using that, so then there is idea of spending money, but if it's not.
Well, we're
I-
just doing just basic upgrades and, the GFIs and stuff, because it's a boating place. There are families that come there. We're just trying to make it safe.
In
That's why
baseball,
we're making the
there's
parking lot
a lot of
bigger.
baseball played.
Yeah.
It gets used.
Yeah.
Field gets
It gets
Yeah,
used.
It
Yeah.
gets used.
And the hall gets used pretty
We're not
well.
spending
hall
a
gets
$500,000.
used to-
We're just spending,
106.
And there aren't a lot of other
Park.
choices on the east side either.
No,
No,
for parks.
that is
No.
the part for
Right.
the east side.
that's
I
their
think
park.
They improved a
And
little
there's
bit, get
people-
more use.
Yep, nope,
Right.
I agree with that.
And expanded it.
Well, they got records
even
of all
more
the people
use.
that use
Yeah.
it.
There you go.
I would make a motion to approve this budget. Can I do that?
You can.
Okay.
Approve, and you got to
Because I
support?
think these
I
are
support that.
reasonable, and I think I've been out there a lot because my grandsons have played baseball, so I'm very familiar with Jameson.
Mhm.
And these are very reasonable costs, and I think that these are all additions that I think that that park needs.
Every
So-
time I go to Jamison Park over the last several years, it's more attractive and seems more pleasant to be there.
Mhm.
And I would like to add that I think it's wonderful that the Township General Fund is supporting Jamison Park along with what the EDA has done.
It's their only park.
That's a recommendation to date. The board will still be, they're going to go through a couple meetings and review the budget. And so we'll see where that ultimately ends up. I think procedurally right now, the agenda item for you, the immediate agenda item would be for the entire board to accept the subcommittee's recommendations.
Mhm.
And then, if you do that, I took the liberty of including it in the recommended EDA budget that we'll talk about here in a moment.
Yep.
And then you'd have an opportunity to approve the funding for that.
So are we okay with Cheryl's motion?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Can I have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. And the subcommittee thanks you.
Okay. Next item, you got a meeting agenda for 2020. Assume that, do we need to take action on that, or?
Yes, you do. You need to approve, the motion would be to approve the 2020 EDA meeting calendar as presented in your packet. It's on page 21 towards the bottom. The meeting continues to be the third Tuesday of the month at 5:15, and the meeting dates are listed here. The Open Meetings Act requires the board to adopt an annual meeting schedule.
Any comment, other than Mike will vote no, but,
To Wednesdays?
yeah. I just, for the members present, this current schedule will work for us. Can I have a motion then to approve the 2020 meeting agenda as presented?
I'll make a motion.
I
To approve
second
it.
Motion by Coyne, support by Charter. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And
Thank you.
next is, I assume Mark wants to talk about the budget.
Yes, so the next item, I guess the last item of the new business is to consider the adoption of the fiscal year 2020 budget for the East and West DDA funds and recommend that the Board of Trustees approve the same. This is on page 22 of your agenda packet. Highlights of the East DDA fund, the total appropriations are $467,000 for the year. Included in that is funding for the pump station #1 project that I just mentioned, assuming the bids come in reasonably, in a reasonable fashion. We did increase the budget for that project based on what we saw in the original bids a little bit. But you'll find that in the 2020 budget recommendation. And then the Jamison Park improvements that we just spoke about, those are included in this budget in the amount of $107,000. I've talked already about the total Jameson Park program. All the Pickard Street maintenance and beautification projects that go on are funded. The lawn mowing, the irrigation, landscape maintenance, holiday lighting, snow plowing, all those kind of things are included in the budget. There's a transfer of $66,000, which is the annual transfer from the EDA fund to the fire fund to support the fire service delivery contract that we have with Mount Pleasant. The FY 2020 budget creates a projected year-end fund balance of $1,300,000 and some change. I will point out that new this year, we put together some long-term projections for both the East and the West EDA funds, which you'll see in your agenda packet. The last 2 pages of your agenda packet are projections out to 2029 to give you an idea of where the fund balance, could end up 10 years from now. And that assumes a steady level of service based on the current levels of service, and it also assumes in the East DDA a $250,000 a year for unnamed projects. So those are the kind of the assumptions built into it. And you'll see that in 2029 in the East DDA, the projected ending fund balance is $1,300,000, which is basically where it is today. So I just point that out because a couple things. One, we'll have to figure out what to spend the $250,000 on at the minimum each year, and then also give consideration to how you feel about a fund balance of that size through the next 10 years. We don't need to address that tonight, but I did want to, I think these long-term projections can be helpful for planning purposes. On the West DDA, total appropriations of $453,000 for the year. Does include the Lincoln Road improvement project south of the bridge. That was approved by this body, and a participation agreement executed back in 2018 in the amount of $330,000. It looks like that project will get done in 2020. So we budgeted monies, our share of that. There's funding in the West DDA of $70,000 to try to get the sidewalk put in along Lincoln Road from here down to the Lux Funeral Home. And then a transfer of $49,000 from the West DDA to the fire fund for support of the same fire service delivery contract. The projected year-end fund balance in FY 20 based on this recommended budget is $705,000. And then again, if you look at your long-term projections, again, it's a level service delivery perspective, $250,000 a year in I'll call them capital projects of some sort. And then you'd have a 2029 projected year-end fund balance of $759,000, which is just a hair above where you are today. So that's the recommended budget. And if the authority is so inclined, you'd entertain a motion to approve that budget, recommend that the Board of Trustees approve it, and then it would go into effect in some fashion or another on 1/1 of 20.
I'd like to maybe make a mention that as long as we're talking budget for next year and we have maintenance items on Pickard Street, I think it'd be prudent for us to set aside monies, $5,000 to $6,000 every year to maintain those park benches and those waste receptacles, so that we don't end up with a mess like we had this year where they basically had to be completely redone. I know a lot of the slats on the benches we reused, but they're weather checked and, they could use changing also. So I think as long as we're maintaining that area, and then, if you walk out there, you'll notice in some of those areas that the concrete's heaved. And I just think that we need to have, like, maybe money set aside every year that goes specifically towards maintenance of the benches and the waste receptacles, but also maybe looking at the concrete in some of those areas. So I don't know how you guys all feel about that, but as long as we're approving a budget, then maybe that would be something that we need to look at.
Don't we have somebody that checks those sidewalks for us, or we used to? Tom would know. For like trip hazards and stuff, like Ben saying, the heaving and because we would need that in there. Because I know we replaced some.
I don't know if we have a forum over there. That's something Randy did maybe back in the day.
Yeah,
or-
it was probably Randy, but
Yeah.
Ben bringing that up, that's a good idea that we need to check
Yeah,
that for
no,
liability.
if there's any safety hazards out there
Yeah.
that need to be addressed, that's kind of.
Yeah. I noticed that when I talked to Mr. Culver, I know he said there's a few of those areas where the benches were, when he set them, they were teetery because the concrete had heaved and checked in some of those areas. But, again, I think that, not to let all this stuff go as bad as it did, where nothing had been done to them for 15 years or whatever. And I think if we do a regular maintenance schedule, then we don't end up with this huge expense all of a sudden.
Sounds like a good idea. Did you see that coming out of the East DDA operating?
You'd have to.
Yeah.
You have to. I mean, whatever money that would be, you got, $49,000 a year set aside for maintenance in those areas. So, and I'm sure that's based upon numbers that we're using for the snow plowing and the fixing to the lighting that's constant and all that. But I think that those areas should be part of that maintenance budget.
Is that something that, do you think you got enough fluff in there, Mark, or we could do an amendment, or what's gonna be the most
That'd be-
prudent thing for tonight?
It would prevent budget amendments. There's plenty of money in the EDA fund.
Yeah, I know,
for
the
something
project
like
fund, we haven't even got designated, so whether
by
it's all
putting some money-
fungible, so
Yeah.
I guess if,
By budgeting some money up front.
yeah, I have no
We'd still
problem.
need to come to the board if there's amounts that exceed contractual authorizations, but
Okay. Is that something you can add to the budget and just, when we do our amendments, if it needs to be a line item, or you think there's enough fluff in there that?
well,
we can-
I think what we do is, if everybody's comfortable with that, then the motion would be to adopt the budget as recommended with the addition of $6,000. And I would suggest adding it right now to the miscellaneous account code.
Yep.
And then that would be inserted in there and communicated to the Board of Trustees.
Can I get a motion?
Do you think that it would be a good idea to list a set of particular maintenance items that would be under that scope of maintenance within that budget item, so that funds don't get used for other things that would be outside the scope, that maybe the funds, because they're available, would be utilized for? Because Ben is talking about maintenance and sidewalks, and if that was the particular description, I'm not saying that has to be done now, but maybe we could put something in the motion that says to have a list of maintenance items specific to these benches.
I think my experience has been, the challenges is, just like on the park benches, if, somebody's gotta step up and say, hey, this needs to be done, and take the bull by the horns and make sure it gets done. Setting aside the money in the budget is the easy part. It's just, like I say, whether you're gonna contract with Mr. Culver again to go out and check and do so many sites, hey, we're gonna redo the concrete on these bad ones or something, but we almost have to have, we really, other than add it to the township staff plate, we really don't have a person to go out and say, hey, used to be Randy, it was pretty good on that, he'd show up to meetings and we could beat on him, hey, check this or do this for us and that, but he's no longer with the township, obviously,
But
so.
if people are gonna complain about things that are going on at the benches, we're not out there checking them all the time. And if they fall within that category of bench item maintenance, then we've
Yeah.
got a fund that can address it.
Yeah,
If they don't fall within that, then they should be addressed under a different heading.
I agree. I think it should be specific to that, and Amy, maybe you'd be able to answer the slats on the benches. Those were. Do you remember how much they were a piece?
Not off the top of my head.
I want to say when I called them up, I thought it was like $60-$70 a board, but then they weigh a ton, so you have the freight cost involved, and so, we have what 28 park benches out there, I think, and 26 receptacles. So I know that they warranted a decent amount of those, from what I understand. The ones that were broken, somehow after all this time, they fell under warranty. I mean, that's amazing.
Yep.
And so maybe what we should do is look at, like a 2 to 3 bench a year program where we go through and do maybe 3 benches and 2 receptacles, and have enough money in the fund that will handle 2 benches, and then after about 5 years, you're new on everything.
Constantly.
What if it
Yeah.
is 60, $70, as you're talking?
Well, you figure that you got the boards, they're really thick and they're super heavy, and so you got to freight them in. It's going to be expensive. So, I mean, so if we did 6,000, is 6,000 sufficient to cover that per year, or do we want to maybe make it like he's saying? Do you want to have to come in with an amendment, or do you just go ahead and set aside and say, we're going to set aside $10,000 a year specific to those areas, and then if it gets used, it gets used. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But then you've got some leeway where he's not having to come back in and ask for money because it's already been budgeted.
And after doing it for a while, you'll begin to find out what is more needed than what we know right now.
Yeah. I know we
on a different
piecemealed
method.
we piecemealed the project.
Mhm.
I mean, there's some of them that got new slats, and some of them have got old slats, but then you've got new slats and old slats, and it's like new boards next to weather check boards. There's a distinct difference, right, from a visual standpoint. So do we want to, say, make it a line item of 10,000? I mean, you've got plenty of leeway, and then if you do have, like, I think the very end one on Somerton and Pickard is the one that I think the concrete was, heaved a decent amount. I mean, that might have to be completely redone, and then you're looking at stamped concrete. That ain't cheap,
Yeah.
right?
No, depends how many you can line up at once.
Yeah.
So,
But probably that will be a good idea to have, send someone from like inspector or somebody to inspect and see what is the position and how many we need to be replaced immediately. So accordingly, then we can set the budget.
Well, maybe this is the time that we do another subcommittee and we
Yeah, I
get
mean, that may be
you
a
know,
good idea.
3 or 4 people on the board that want to go out and do a
Look at it.
walkthrough and
Yeah,
do that. I mean,
that may be.
that seems
best.
like the easier methodology,
Yeah,
right?
you're right.
well, let's bring it back to the budget discussion, and it's how much money do we want to, I guess my preference is maintenance. We've got a lot more individual, you know, if you look at lawn mowing, how much we spend a year on lawn mowing or snow plowing or whatever, my guess is there's several items that are above $5,000 or $10,000, so.
Which I agree with,
I'm-
but what I'm trying to say is I'm trying to put in some type of standard process of how these budget items are managed. And I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
okay, we're throwing money out here for what?
Yeah.
For the maintenance of benches. What type of maintenance? And then
Yeah.
we know where it's described. And that's, I think, if it can't be done tonight as part of this motion, I think it should be included as part of the process of how those, not just that, but how other things are handled in the same way.
Yeah, and I would say from a job costing standpoint, which is what I do every day, is I can go to these young ladies and say, how much did we spend on park benches last year? And we only have 2 or 3. Just like, how much do we spend on the baskets? Do we only have 2 or 3 vendors, 2 or 3 suppliers? And they will issue a report for the last X years to do that. So I think, don't have any problem other than just moving this on. That we probably talked about it enough. So if the board wishes to do that, but a budget is basically to set aside enough money so we know we're not gonna overspend for next year. And if we wanna have a follow-up of how we make it happen, I think is more important, but that's, in my feeling, it's outside the, scope of setting up the budget, what we're here to do tonight.
Yeah.
So I'm all for, because again, the problem is identifying what needs to be done and then following up to make sure the work gets done. That's where we struggle as a board. But identifying projects and executing them.
Right.
So do we want to budget 6, or we want to budget a little bit more than that, so we've got some leeway?
We can budget 10, be fine.
That's what
I think
I think,
10.
budget 10.
We have the money, so.
Right. I think you might get into some sidewalk issues. once
Yep,
you-
and depending on how much has got to be done, quote unquote, right now, will be the variable.
If your motion includes the $10,000 for maintenance to park benches, trash receptacles, and sidewalk repairs,
Blower
then we
basket.
will include those notes within the budget document,
Okay.
and that'll be our alert that that's what the money's
Great.
to be
Okay.
used for.
Can I get a motion to that effect?
Yeah, I think.
Is there anything you want to do differently on the West EDA budget?
No, you want to do them both together?
Well, no, good point, probably should do them separately.
Yeah. Okay, let's say. Okay, we've got a motion by Chowdhury, support to amend the budget as presented to add $10,000 for the additional maintenance of park benches, receptacles, and any concrete in those areas.
Support.
Coin, support. Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Me,
Motion carries.
Rabble rouser.
That's all right.
Money's there.
All right, West
You
EDA.
can walk that
I
road.
guess, any comments about what was presented on the West DDA operating budget for 2020?
I guess my only question would be the sidewalk down to the Lux Funeral Home. We are crossing private property on those areas, and so it does kind of set a precedent that we've put sidewalks on for,
I'd like to, I'd like to make sure that's okay. I don't,
But you only have, it's only church property, it's not private property.
well,
It's
you
all-
got the Masonic,
but it's outside the
Oh.
boundaries of the DDA is my
Yeah.
concern. So
There's a
I-
couple of approaches we're taking to this. One is, we have talked to the road commission about trying to utilize the right-of-way,
Mhm.
and there are some possibilities there. And if not, then we would need to approach the couple property owners about securing easements, and then we'd be paying for the EDA, or the West EDA, would be paying for the installation of that sidewalk. And right now, we budgeted $70,000 to do that. That was in the ballpark. And that is supported by the Pathway and Sidewalk Committee, trying to get that sidewalk in. The West EDA, as we've seen, has the funds to do it, and I think the EDA needs to put together a committee or have a lot of discussion about how to spend your money every year. It's not as easy as we think. Otherwise, we see these balances keep increasing, and
Here, here.
that's not good either.
Nope. Any other comments on the West EDA's budget? Do I have a motion?
I move we accept the West DDA budget as presented.
Motion by Figgs, support by
Support.
Moyne.
Thought you already did.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. That is it for me.
Think. Any other business items for the good of the order?
Can't think of anything.
Hearing-
Nothing.
Hearing none. Being adjourned at 6:04. The next meeting is
You can put this,
19?
there's your wallet. so
19th.
you can put
Yeah.
that in there.
That's far enough away from